Well, I'm Ken Miller. I'm a retired Millersville biology professor that I've gotten interested in the old lime kilns in Lancaster County. And here we have one. This one's being filled in by the farmer as a dump. We had a difficult time getting in here, but it's interesting that the Atlas of 1875 for Lancaster County has most of the lime kilns that were in existence at that time marked on the map, and so that allows me to at least trace them down. And most of those old ones from 1875 are no longer existing, but a small percentage of them still are, and occasionally we find one like this one. This is made of sandstone and conglomerate, and this, of course, is where they took the lime out. That is the burnt stone. If we could see up on top, you would find a large bowl in behind this, and that would be lined with sometimes as old as this one is, probably lined with sandstone, but in later years they lined that bowl with fire brick. But of course they didn't. They burned lime. What they would do then is burn limestone in here. We're at the northern end of the limestone belt here for Lancaster County, but we do find fingers of limestone coming up here. Most of it is sandstone. But they were able to break up the quarry the limestone, break it up into pieces about the size of a man's head was sort of the gauge, and then they would dump it into. First, they would build a wooden brush pile, we might call it, on the floor of the bowl, and then they would put stone on top of that, a layer of stone, and then they would put more wood. Maybe 18, 20 inches thick, and then more layer of stone until they got to the top, and then they would cover it with soil, and they would poke holes into it for draft, and then they would light the fire in the bottom. And of course, sometimes they would close this entrance up because they didn't want it to burn too fast. They burn too fast, it gets too hot, and then it will melt some of the stone, and doesn't get hot enough, it won't convert it to calcium oxide, which is it drives off the carbon dioxide and leaves carbon dioxide. The stone itself is calcium carbonate. And so the calcium oxide then would be the form in which it is after it's burned. Now, the word burning is sort of a misnomer. It's always referred to as burning, but the stone doesn't burn. I think baking or maybe roasting would be a better term, but you don't see that term used. But at about 900 degrees Fahrenheit, it would undergo a chemical change from calcium carbonate to calcium oxide, and that would be where the lime would come from. And of course, it would be more brittle. It could easily be broken up and pulverized. And in that state, as calcium oxide, it reacts violently with water. And so they would sometimes, depending upon the use they wanted with the lime, if it was going to be made into mortar, used for that was the only source of lime for mortar. All the old buildings you see, the old houses that go back into the 19th century and earlier around here were all built with mortar that was made from the lime that was burned in kilns like this. And so they would add water to it, and it would get very hot. A friend of mine used to do a demonstration where he would burn a lime kiln for a demonstration, and then he would get some of the lime and put it in a container and add water, and then it would get hot and bubble. And he always had a little trick. He would put a couple of raw eggs in into it and continue his talk, and then in a little while he'd get them out and break them open, and here they were hard-boiled. So that reaction with the calcium oxide with water does undergo a chemical change and becomes what we call calcium hydroxide, or that's the form in which it is used and also put on the fields. A lot of it was put on fields to sweeten the fields, spread on the fields in piles in the winter. Some of it was used, they would make it into a slurry and make whitewash out of it and put it on the fences and the sides of stone barns, and wherever they wanted. Instead of paint, they would use the whitewash, which was made from this product that we're describing. And of course, the burning of limestone can be traced all the way back, certainly through the Roman period. Cato, some of the old Roman writers, Pliny wrote about burning lime. It can be traced, in fact, all the way back to approximately 10,000 BC. They have found some evidence of lime was burned in, archaeologists discovered this in a cave where they found the remains of a pit in which they burned lime. That was carbon dated the artifacts there to approximately 10,000 BC. So the burning of lime was probably the first human industry. Certainly it goes back that far. So that's the story of lime burning in a nutshell, and we feel kind of pleased that we can still find some of these around the county. And this one, in spite of it being used as a dump around here, is still in very nice condition.